Hi everyone, welcome to this next video. We're going to learn now how to take our model, break it apart, flatten it out, and get it ready to make some cut lines. To do that, we're going to want to create another copy of it so we can have this one that's kind of left alone. So I'm just going to highlight everything like this, and I'm going to check my bodies folder to make sure I have all the bodies done. And I'm going to use the Move Copy tool. And over here, before I move anything, I'm going to say create a copy. And now I'm going to move that copy out over to the side somewhere, just, pretty clear of this, but not enormously far away. And then I'm just going to say, okay. Now it just made a whole nother copy of all my things. So what I'm going to do is organize this a little bit. I'm going to right click on the bodies menu here and choose new group. I'm going to double click on that group 3 or click on the group 3, and I'm going to call this assembled. This is where I'm going to leave the one that's all done and assembled. I'm going to create another folder, and I'm going to call this folder flattened. This is the one we're going to flatten stuff out. Now I'm going to take the first ones that are over here and put them in the assembled folder. And then the last ones, the copy, I'm going to put into the flattened one. And now the reason we do this is we can now mess with this flattened one and smoosh it all out without affecting our original one, and we can easily turn off one or both of them by just hitting one button instead of having to turn off every single piece. So I'm going to get rid of the assembled one so I don't mess it up, and then I'm going to recenter my space, because right now if I move, you can see like the pivot point's weird. It's like in the middle of the air somewhere. But if I just hit the home button, it recenters it for me, so now my pivot's in the middle of my object. All right. It's always a good tip to recenter. Now what we're going to do is we're going to flatten this thing out. So the first thing to do is figure out what we want to flatten to. And in this case, we're going to flatten to the bottom. We could flatten to the front, but the face is actually tipped up 40 degrees from any of the sides, which might make some other things harder. So instead of doing that, we're going to flatten down to the bottom, which is kind of like already flattish. All right. So I'm going to use my align tool to start with. So modify and then go down to align. Now, one thing I might want to do, because I'm going to use the align tool several times, is I'm going to click on these caterpillar menu and I'm going to click the pin to taskbar. That'll put it up here in the taskbar, be easier to find. I can also click here and say change keyboard shortcut, so I can see what the shortcut is. And this one says bracket left is the shortcut key. And what that is, it's like the little square parentheses. It's just to the upper left of the enter key. And it's the left-hand one. So I'm going to try that real quick. I'm going to say left bracket, and sure enough, it brings up the align menu, so that's good. Now it's going to ask you what you're doing, bodies or components. In this case, we have all bodies. So we're going to leave it on bodies. And then it says from and to. The from is the thing that you're moving. The to is where you're moving it to, aligning it to. So I want to take this surface. I don't want to get on any point. Be sure you're not getting on any points. I want to be on this surface somewhere out here. And I want to align this surface back behind it to the surface of this. Again, I'm not on any points, just in the kind of random middle like that. And that's perfect. Now the two surfaces are lined up. Now, of course, they're also inside of each other, so we're going to fix that real quick. So I'm going to go back to the home. I'm going to do move. Actually, I'm going to go to the top view. I'm going to do move. I'm going to click on this one, which is the front face, and then I'm just going to drag it up to like, well, let me drag it. I'm going to drag it down. Doesn't really matter which way you drag it. But I'm going to leave enough room that I'm going to be able to put the two sides in between these two. So I'm going to leave a little bit extra room there. Awesome. So there's the face, there's the bottom, and now I'm going to do the same thing to the two sides. I'm going to tip them sideways. I'm going to hit the left bracket on my keyboard, or I could use the align button. And I'm going to go from this outside face, I'm going to tip it onto this one. And I'm going to say okay. And now I also want to keep this outside face. I don't want to grab this inside face and align it because it's going to be like inside out for me. I want all the outsides facing up the same direction as before. So I'm going to click over here to this corner and I'm going to say, hey, let's do that align tool. I'm going to hit the bracket button again, outside face to that one. And I'm going to say, okay. Now I'm going to go back to my top view, and I need to move these out of the way now. So I'm going to use the M key, click here. Because I'm in the top view, I can just grab this center thing and just kind of move them around wherever I want. So I think like there is good, and enter, and then move. Let's move this one. And again, I'm just going to grab it and slide it underneath here. And that looks good. Okay. Now I'm just going to take a quick look from the right-hand side of my model and make sure that the top's all in it. Yeah, so see how this top is all lined up across here? That's exactly what I was hoping for. A nice straight line all the way across the tops. Now notice, these two are 1 layer thick, and this one is 3 layers thick. So we'll have to create 3 cut lines for this first part. All right, let's do the cut lines now. So now we've got everything kind of laid out. I'm going to create what's called a construction plane. So what we want to do is we want to create a plane, a drawing plane that's just down inside the first layer. So I'm going to do an offset plane here. And what it asks for is, hey, what do you want to offset it from? Well, we want to offset it from this top right here. And we know each layer is about 0.27 something centimeters. So we're going to offset it just inside that first layer. So just down 0.1. And this actually brought it up. I did a positive 0.1. You can, if I look from the right, see how that construction plane is just above the surface? I actually wanted this to be negative 0.1. Now do you see how it's just barely inside that first layer? Anywhere inside the first layer, you're totally fine. And we're going to click OK. Go back up to this home view. And now we're going to create a sketch. And we're going to put that sketch on the plane we just made. Not on this surface, but on this plane down here. And now we're going to use a really cool tool called the Intersect Tool. So we're going to go to Create Menu, come down here to Project Include, and then we're going to choose the Intersect. We can see it's Control-Shift-Z if you want to use that in the future. We can also add this one pinned to taskbar, so we're going to use this a lot. And that's the Intersect tool right there. Okay, so I'm going to do just like that. And now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say, okay, what geometry do I want? I'm going to select that. But first, I want to change the selection filter to bodies because I want to see where the body passes through this plane. And then, so right here, I click here. And you can see that first layer, it passes through where all these red lines are. But it doesn't, there's nothing here on this first layer because we cut that away. So that's the cut line we're going to get right there. So I'm going to click on this one, and set it. And then notice there's red lines going all around the outline of this. That makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. And I'm going to say, okay. Now I'm going to check my sketches folder because that's where it's going to put this. And down here at the bottom, sketch 23, I'm going to turn off all the bodies. That is my cut line that I'm going to send to the laser cutter or send to Inkscape first to create cut lines with. So one thing we do need though, when we go to our Inkscape, the next program, we're going to need to have a dimension in here that we can scale it by. So we need to have one known dimension. And the way I always like doing is going from the very top to the very bottom. And that's why I like to put these sort of complicated weird shapes in the middle. So I have a nice flat line on the bottom and the top to measure. So here we go, measure. I'm going to measure from here down to the bottom line. That's the total height of the whole thing. And that's 27.36 centimeters. So I'm going to remember that number, 27.36. Got it. Come over here. I'm going to finish the sketch. Come over here. I'm going to rename this sketch. And this is going to be layer 1. It's going to be 27.36 is the distance. I'm going to put 0 because usually it's 3 decimal places. All right, awesome. We have layer 1 done. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hide layer 1. I don't need to see it. I'm going to turn the flattened pieces back on so I can see them. And now we need to go down to layer 2. So again, I'm going to take an offset plane. And this, I'm going to start that same place, right, at the very top surface. And I'm going to say, hey, what I want to do is I want to have the plane offset down, so negative 1 thickness. So I'm going to type thickness in. That got me all the way down to the bottom of layer 1. And now I need to go a little bit more just to get into layer 2. And I want to go down still, so I go minus 0.1. I'm still moving downward. Enter. Now I'm just going to check it real quick. I'm going to click on the right-hand view here. I'm going to zoom over and see, oh, yep, see there's the bottom of layer 1. So this thing is down in layer 2. So that's just perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to do a sketch onto the plane I just created, my construction plane. And I'm going to do here an intersect. And I'm going to look here. Boom. Oh, that's interesting. So now you can see the red line don't match the black lines because we're creating cut lines for layer 2 now, one layer deeper. And they're a little bit wider than the openings, which is how it's supposed to be. And you can see the tabs in there for the sides to click onto. So that's good. I'm going to click on it. And when I click here, notice there's no red. And that's because these pieces, these 3 pieces, don't intersect the plane we created because we created the plane on the second layer. So we can click on them if we want to, but they won't add a drawing to our drawing. So we click OK. And then we can hide the bodies. And you can see it didn't draw any lines for those other 2 because they're above the layer. And now we're going to do the same thing as before. Now we know this width here is 10 centimeters because that's what we made it, but we can just check. Let's just check to make sure. It's too easy not to. So here, from this line to this line is 10 centimeters. Yep, just like we thought. So this next one, we're going to rename it to layer 2 and 10.123, 3 zeros. I like to put all 3 decimal places even when there aren't any. All right. So that looks great. I'm going to turn that one off, turn the flatten things back on, and just repeat that process. So I'm going to come up here and grab, we got to finish the sketch first. Now I can turn the sketch off. And now I need to come up here and grab a construction plane, click back on my top surface. This time I'm going to do minus, because I'm going to go down, thickness times 2. That gets me to the bottom of the second layer. And then I go down a little bit more to be in the third layer. So minus 0.1 and enter. And now I need to create a sketch on that plane. And I'm going to do my intersect tool. And I'm going to click on all 4 things, although I know these 3 shouldn't make any lines. And this one makes different lines than I did before. Click on that as well. And I'm going to say, OK. I'm going to check to make sure it makes sense to me, flattened. OK, yep, that bottom layer should just be a piece of wood with tabs cut into it. And then, so this distance is still 10 centimeters. So I'm just going to save this here as layer 3-10.00. All right, awesome. And then I'm going to finish the sketch, turn the sketch off, and now I'm going to turn both my views back on and click back to home. And this is how I'm going to save my file. So I'm going to do Control S for save. And I'm just going to call this final. And that way, when I save it and when I return back to my screen like this, it'll create that thumbnail. And I can very easily see in Fusion 360 what this project was. I can see, oh, it's this one, and it's already broken down. Everything's ready to go. Now, we need to export these 3 drawings, layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3. We'll do that work in the next video. Thanks a lot.